welcome everybody to CareerFest 2023 Construction and Engineering Panel. I'm Nicole Kinsella, the College and Career Counselor at Pioneer High School and the moderator of this session. We also have Brianna Marr over here in the background with the webinar for those of you who are watching virtually. The Q&A feature has been enabled, so please use that to ask any questions of our panelists, and we will incorporate them at the end of this session. So now I'm going to introduce our special guest here today. We have Mitch Blanchard from Blanchard Construction Manager, Steve Click, who is an engineering geologist with Bauer Associates, owner of Bauer Associates, yes. And then Morgan Seckman with Medtronic, Research and Development Engineer. So Mitch, if you could get us started. So basically, if you could just introduce yourself and give us a short overview of what you do as a construction manager, and also just like your educational path to get to your career.
Sure. Yeah. So as Nicole said, I'm a construction manager, and we've been in Santa Rosa for the last 35 plus years doing custom homes. And so it's very hard to like distill down really what I do, but basically I am mostly on site at this point. So I run crews and subs to basically go ground up to build custom homes in Santa Rosa. The short answer to that. And my career path, or my schooling path, was I did high school in Santa Rosa at Carl Newman. And then from there, my dad actually already owned the construction company I'm at now. So I went from that, and I kind of dabbled in a couple other paths in college, but then ultimately I decided I wanted to kind of follow my dad's footsteps, and I got into business there, and then I've been just trucking along ever since. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks, Mitch. Steve, if you could give us a short overview of your company and your role and the educational foundation.
So yeah, I'm Steve Click. I'm an engineering geologist with Bauer Associates. It's the company. The company's been around for 30-something years and here in Sonoma County. For me, I started a little different. I grew up on the coast over here and around logging. So back when the trees were actually being cut down and those things, and around a lot of heavy equipment. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. Went to college, started as going as actually for engineering, but then changed, and then didn't know, went to back to junior college from regular college, from four-year school, and back and decided I was going to get a degree in forestry for back to the logging. My family did on the coast, and took a geology class. They required a geology class. This is what happens when you go to college. You take a class, it's for something else unrelated. You decide that is way better than what I'm studying, and I changed my major, became a geologist. So I went through, finished college in geology, and ended up. You don't have to do it for what I do today, but I ended up with a master's degree and then another master's degree, and it just depends on if you like school or not. And that came back in the geology, got in, did geology. You can do two different major fields. One is environmental, dealing with contamination. So gas stations used to contaminate the ground underneath it. The other is what I do now. So I don't do any of that environmental anymore. That's all geotechnical, which is related to civil engineering. And so the geology portion is, we live in an area with big faults, big earthquakes. You don't want to build on that. We see now with all the rain, there's landslides, and we don't want to do that. So I'm looking at that type of stuff. Geotechnical engineering in itself is designing, we want to put this building here. What do we need to do to the ground underneath it to keep the building straight? So kind of a weird path to get to where I'm at, but it all works out in the end.
Great, thank you. I love that. So Morgan, if you could briefly introduce yourself and give us a short overview of your responsibilities as a research and development engineer at Medtronic and your career path.
Yeah, my name is Morgan. I'm from Wisconsin, so not this area at all. And I used to live on the East Coast as well too before I even came here. So I guess dabbling around the country to the best I can. So I got my degree in mechanical engineering at Iowa State University. I only have a bachelor's. I never decided to go get a master's, but maybe a consideration for the future. And I wanted to work in healthcare. So at Medtronic right now, I'm a research and development engineer. Kind of a fancy sounding title, maybe something different every single day. But when you break it down, what you're actually doing, and like our R&D team stands for research and development, is taking a product from concept to something that could be used in a patient. So again, focusing on medical technologies, and that phase can be years and years and years long. So it depends where you end up in kind of something like product development, but the same concept of R&D to medical devices and product development applies across lots of industries. You eat Kellogg's, like there's an R&D team that works on like developing cereal at other companies, and there's going to be R&D teams that work on really developing anything. So that's kind of a transferable concept. But what I do on a day-to-day basis, I will share that I probably send lots of emails. I have lots of meetings. Right now, for example, I'm specifically planning an animal study, a preclinical study, and test our device for efficacy and safety before we expand our product into another geography. So it's really big picture, but the details sometimes are less exciting than it sounds, but they're necessary and they're still really interesting.
Thank you so much. So this next question is for all panelists. So what sparked your interest in your career, and what do you love most about what you do? And Morgan, if you want to get us started.
I was interested in healthcare before I decided to do engineering, and I just found engineering as a path there. I was really interested in prostheses. My dad has a prosthetic eye. So that kind of sparked my interest in general for larger med tech. And then once you start getting into medical technology, you realize how big it is. So I really wanted to be a part of healthcare. I really wanted to be like in an industry where it's kind of focused on helping people. And yeah, I just found engineering as a path there. Oh, what do I really like about my job? I think my job's really exciting because there's so many different things that I can do. I have really independent options on what I'm going to be working on. I get power to make decisions, feel very like data-driven decisions is something that I lean towards, like just in general as a person. So it's kind of a good alignment there. The people I work with at Medtronic are really exciting. I think I get to work with a lot of like subject matter experts. That's super interesting. And I get to feel creative probably in what I do.
Great, thank you. So Steve, you talked a little bit about how you got interested in your field, but what do you love most about what you do?
So, yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on this a little bit. And so one of the things that steered me towards geology out of other fields was, even as a kid, I liked watching dirt move. So a bulldozer pushing dirt, type of thing. I don't know, I was always interested in it. So I guess when I took a geology class, talking about rocks and dirt things, it kind of was like, oh, that's actually pretty neat. And so that kind of pushed me into that. And if you find with whatever you do, what you should do is something that you kind of do it whether you got paid or not, you like doing it. And so geology was easy for me because of that. And now as you go through and what I do it as a career, what I really like about it is one thing I didn't want to do when I was your age and going through college. I was thought, I don't want to sit in front of a computer all day. I don't want to be in an office all day. I want to be outside and things. And so my profession now is one of the engineering fields that you do not have to be in front of a computer all day. I spend half of my time out in the field going to look and walking properties, meeting people like Mitch on the houses they're building, hanging out with them, seeing different people, seeing different ground, the ground underneath every single house, building, whatever, is all different. So it keeps you outside. So it's nice to be able to do that, in our area. A lot of these places you get to go outside and walk around and check out at my field. It's like going to parks. They're beautiful places. Cool spot.
Thank you. So thank you, Steve. So Mitch, how did you become interested in your career? You talked a little bit about that, but what do you love most about what you do?
What's really interesting about what I do is that there's literally in a building, there are so many different systems, working together. So even just going from crew to crew throughout my day, I get to see very different problems that need to be solved. And so I can be in any given day, I can be in the morning in a trench somewhere looking at very messy sewage, or I can be in the office going over detailed plans and drawing out shop drawings to build cabinets. So it's just a very wide array of things that I get to do. And I personally get bored really quickly if I'm doing the same thing for more than a very short period of time. So I think that's about the most about what I do.
I totally get that.
Yeah.
For sure. Great, thank you. So this next question is for Morgan and Steve. So what high school classes do you feel most relate to your profession? And are there any classes that you wish you had taken that you didn't? And Morgan, go ahead and start with you.
So classes that would relate to my profession, I think, maybe I'll answer this in a different way than what you're expecting. I'm thinking of classes that would be team-based or we have to do projects. No matter what you're working on, like getting experience working on a team, that's super applicable to what I do. Getting experience with like conflict resolution with other folks like that. A lot of times, you know, you have classes, you have independent work, but a lot of times like those group projects or classes that are going to push you into group projects were probably the most impactful for me. And I would have probably taken more classes like that or classes where I had to take on leadership roles, things like that. So not a specific class, but more about how you kind of work in a class. And specifically for my industry, like biology, anatomy, things related to that are really helpful knowledge, but I'm learning that on the job constantly. So it's definitely not a requirement to need to have a ton. Nonetheless, in high school, I probably would have just done more exploring what I was interested in career-wise and probably understand a bit more like how career intersects with life and like financial classes and like getting up on my financial literacy. That applies to my personal life, but also my job. Like I need to manage $500,000 budgets and things like that for projects I'm working on. You need to understand details like that. So it's going to benefit your personal life, but also things that you can apply to your projects. So kind of focusing a little bit more on, life management skills and how that's going to transfer into your work.
Yeah, super important. Thank you. Sure. And Steve, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's a hard one to answer. They're all important. I mean, in my world, and I think through my career, different things I've done. I haven't always been a geologist. So tested a few different career paths and things, a couple common things. And so it was just described, you know, working with groups, that's huge, working with people. You know what I mean? So if you go out, even you want to do construction engineering or whatever, but you need money now, so you're on your waiting tables or something. Learn a lot about people, waiting tables. So that's hugely important to everything you do. But certain common things, and maybe it's just the way my brain works and what I do, but an understanding of basic algebra, really knowing that, so it's easy for you. It's hugely important in life. Everything you do, you won't realize that oh, that's like algebra, that's simple. I mean, real basic stuff. If you took algebra in 8th grade, that level. You don't need to get complicated. You don't need to get calculus. You will if you got to be an engineer, if you want to be an engineer. But the really important, even for engineers, the designing very complex things, and it goes back to real basic. I think that's really important. That understanding of that, and maybe it takes time of going through your education, working to kind of figure out that really was important then, but that basic knowledge is important. You know, other classes I took that relate to my career, you know, I took a physics class in high school. That was interesting. I don't know, it's you learn later, I guess, as you do things, why that concept you learned in there was important. I think a lot of things they teach you in school are abstract at high school level, and you don't really understand why is this important. But a lot of it ends up being important. And then back to the people and dealing with people thing, you know, even English, writing, being able to communicate what you're doing, whatever it is really important. And so you don't have to be perfect, but you don't want people to misunderstand what you wrote in an email. You know, you want people to understand. You know, people respond and say, "Oh yeah," and you're like, "You said this," and you're like, "No, I didn't," and it's because you weren't being clear about what you were asking. So those types of things are important.
Yeah, great. So true. And I love that because that's often something that students are like, why are we taking these classes? I don't even, want to do that, something in that, related career they don't think, but it's all relevant. So great. Thank you so much. So Mitch, this question is for you. So what skills are essential for success in your career? So we often hear like soft and hard skills. I kind of actually like essential and technical skills, I think is more accurate. So
That are essential for my career.
yeah, like, those you hear those soft skills that I like.
I think like the main skill that is the most important for my profession would be probably people skills. Because the ability to walk into a house where I have customers and make them feel like I'm doing everything in my power to build them something that they're gonna love at the end of it is really important, especially because we get to walk in and we see thousands of homes being built over the years. And so we have a really good understanding of what that building is gonna look like when we're done. And sometimes it takes a bit of convincing of the client that what they're asking us for is what we're actually doing for them. And that what their decisions are is really gonna look beautiful when we're done. So,
Great, yeah, people skills are important in all careers, right?
yeah.
This is for all panelists. So, is there a way for high school students to get some experience in your field through like internships, job shadows, mentorships? We're gonna get started.
Sure. I think if anyone's aware, we had a mentorship program earlier here. So that was just something that I had personal interest to create. But I personally believe if you really want to have experience in a field, you should just ask for it. Like people will create opportunities. I know if one of you emailed me after this, like I want to learn more about this, I could go find somebody who would love to mentor you. It's just a matter of asking and kind of putting yourself out there. So sometimes Medtronic, I don't know specifically about in Santa Rosa, but Medtronic does WISE internships sometimes. So it's for women in science and engineering, and they do high school level internships. So I think juniors or seniors in high school. So I know specific to Medtronic that there are those types of opportunities, not that I know about happening in Santa Rosa, but we constantly have people asking, and sometimes opportunities come up and people get paired. So it's just letting people know that you're having that interest and giving them the option to create the opportunity for you. So that's kind of like a way to create the opportunity in a way that it already exists, but just seeking it out.
Sure, thank you. All right, Steve, how about you?
Yeah, so it's kind of this along the same lines. In my particular field and what we do in our office, sometimes we get asked this, and it's a little difficult for high school kids for a lot of what we do because we're out on big construction sites with big equipment, and sometimes for safety reasons, you have to be 18 to be there, and so kind of limits where we can bring you. But in civil engineering in general, we have multiple firms. I mean, it's ours, but there's a lot doing the different parts of civil engineering, like designing the road that's being built out in front of us here, type of thing. So those companies, all of them, you reach out to them. If you're interested, you really reach out to them. They will make something happen for you. They'll figure it out. I do know one of our local structural engineering firms. I've met a few high school kids from Windsor that go there and they find little things for them to mentor, to learn about what they do and jobs they can do, and kind of build them, give them a little intros, kind of figure out things so that when you go off to college to study engineering, you have a little more general idea. What are you actually going to do with that engineering degree you're going to go to college for? Yeah, it's about a little bit about being proactive on your own to kind of figure out. It's a little challenging because you probably don't understand what all the different engineering fields are. But asking questions, looking online, what is different things? What does a civil engineer do? There's all kinds of YouTube videos on it, and figure out. And then there's a firm that does that. And talk to them. They'd be happy to talk to them.
Great, thank you.
I'll jump off and say, I think value even in like a few hours, like go there for a day or a few hours. And just like you mentioned before, you can start breaking down some of the assumptions. If you don't want to work in an office every day and you walk around that building and get the sense this job is in the office all the time, maybe you had an assumption something else and that was a really big deal to you. You can kind of like break down some assumptions right off the bat. So what people do, what you find on like Google might often be different than like following them around a day to day. One day is only one day, but nonetheless, like you kind of are learning what you didn't even know to ask about in the first place and taking that all in just by having a short experience, a few hours or something like that.
On that line, one of the engineering groups that I belong to, we were doing it prior to COVID and then it stopped, but we would take a day a year and where we would get all our firms and offer sort of a day of job shadowing. Sometimes you'd be at one firm or maybe go to a couple to see different things, because you may show up to one and then you go, oh, well, I don't want to do that. You show up to another one, I don't even know what you guys do, and you, oh, that's really cool. So to see it, it's interesting. You know, if any of your seniors, it's probably not. If we did it next year, you're gone, so it won't help you, but I guess we'll be in touch, because if we do offer that, you know, we would want to be able to bring that to the school for the ability to job shadow.
Great, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Great, thank you. And so Mitch, how can students gain experience in your field?
Well, I mean, it seems like you guys are really lucky that you have a high school program that's already kind of covering some of the topics of what I do, because I don't see a lot of we don't have the standard apprenticeship kind of stuff that can really apply to high school level students, because for us, we really need people who are there for the long haul, right? And even for summer jobs, it can kind of get difficult too, because you know, 3 months in and then out is not quite enough time to get enough experience to really be valuable. So that really just costs us money. But if you guys are interested in doing something like a job shadowing for a day or something like that, you know, I can always do that. If you guys want to email me, and you guys can shadow me for a day or something like that. I'm sure there are bigger companies than me that may have other programs that would allow you guys to get in there and do similar things. So that's probably the best way to go about that.
I have one more thing to add.
Love it.
It's something you could do in high school. It's going to help you get the experience later. Like, even if you can't get a short-term internship or a shadow now, if you reach out and you start your networking early on, that's going to help set you up to maybe get an internship when the time is right, or get a job in one of these roles or at one of these companies when the time is right. But you can like start establishing your network right now.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Perfect advice. Great. So this is another question for all panelists. So thinking back to when you were in high school, what is your one piece of advice? And you guys have already kind of touched on this, but one piece of advice you'd give to students today. So education, pathway, work experience, life, etc. Just anything that you're thinking back to yourself. What would you have wanted to know? And Steve, we'll go ahead and start with you this time.
So, you know, I think looking back in kind of this weird path that I took through my both education and career. So education wise, to give you guys a little hint, I went to 8 different colleges. So, you know, don't worry about it. Just keep moving forward. But the biggest thing I'd tell you, you know, as you're moving forward in life and in from high school and whatever, and you're looking out there, it's the big unknown. You don't have to be set in, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. You don't have to be that. There's a lot of things you don't even know exist that you'll be exposed to that'll push you in directions you'll never imagine. So just remember, life is not a straight line. It goes all over the place. Sometimes some of you, maybe there's a few in the room that you know what you want to do, and you'll get into that career and you'll do that your whole life. That's great. You know, you'll do that. A lot of us don't follow that path and go all over. So remember, life's not a straight line. Just keep moving forward as you go through it. So you go through, whether you go to college or not, and whatever job you do, you go to one employer to another and whatever. Even if it's something you don't like and you work there for 6 months and realize I didn't like either the company or the job, and you move to a different one, or college, you're taking classes. There's always something to learn from every single experience you go through, whether it's a job, a class, whatever. You'll always learn something from each one. If you can remember, it's just, what am I going to learn? And it may be what you learn is, I don't like that. But sometimes you'll learn, you know, usually you'll learn something positive, and it can all carry over. And there'll be things, if you can make connections from those learning experience, from class, from work, from whatever it is, from one thing to another. Because say you start off over here doing this, I don't know, like back to the waiting tables, and then 10 years down the road, you're over here and you're working for Mitch, and there's something that connected. Hey, we did this that way over there, and you realize that, hey, can't we do this here? And he's racking his brain trying to figure out how to do something. And you connected it from some other thing that was totally unrelated. He goes, wow, that's a great idea. Realize that there's pieces of information you'll pick up along the way. So don't, you know, especially if you go and take a weird turn and, oh, I gotta go back a little bit. It's okay. Learn from some, keep going forward. So, you know, and if, I guess, or what, from high school, my high school experience, if I kind of understood that, and now I understand that, but back then I didn't really look at it that way. And so you get stressed out about it, like, dang it, you know, not making progress or whatever. And so, you know, just remember it's okay. It's okay. You know, you just take something out and keep going. Go a different direction. It's fine. Keep going. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. And those transferable skills, so important, right? Thanks. Mitch, how about you?
Oh, boy. High school seemed like it was a long time ago. I wish it was farther away. I understand how difficult this time frame can be and how difficult it can be to be really invested in this time because there's so many other things that you want to be doing. But I mean, if I would have understood how important it was to be able to write a, you know, succinct proposal to clients and been able to understand how important it was going to be to understand that high school English was going to be probably the majority of my English writing experience, or the fact that, you know, basic framing is all geometry and trigonometry. And that to be able to find those kind of angles out in the field and getting good at that and understanding, and we have there's lots of tricks to the trade, right? But you know, as a general contractor, engineering is a huge portion of what we do, even though we need people to be able to actually sign off on the engineering for us, right? So, and especially in the custom home world, there's a lot of smaller projects that we don't actually have the ability to pay for big engineers to come in and do some of the engineering for us. So having the math skills, the writing skills are absolutely like important. And if you're not thinking that a college career is the way for you to go, it's even more important, right? Because that's really the end of the schooling that you're gonna have, right? So if you're gonna go into construction management, I would highly suggest doing a college, getting a college degree to do that. But you know, if college isn't the way to go, you can still become a construction manager. But it takes a lot more blood, sweat, and tears that way.
Great advice. Thank you. And Morgan, what advice would you give for students?
Yeah, I feel like my advice would probably be to focus on things outside of the classroom a lot. You already have everybody having you focus on the classroom, you have your homework, you have your teachers and everyone, you're getting support in that area. You should still put a lot of effort there, but there's a lot of things you're not learning in school that are important too. Like we already focused on network. That's big. My first internship I had, or not my second internship rather, a pretty big company, like Fortune 100 company, pretty big, you know, it was kind of a big deal for me to get an internship there. And I remember thinking, oh, like everyone here is probably going to be from like an Ivy League school and they're going to be so smart. And a lot of them were, but I remember one by one, I'd ask them like, how did you get this internship? And they'd be like, well, my dad used to be the director of the FBI, who was friends with a security person here, who then forwarded me on to XYZ. It was always a story like that. You have to have the credentials and you have to have the experience to get the job, but that doesn't always lead you to an interview. An interview is like necessary for the job. So it's just maybe an example of how important a network can be in building the network there. And other things like, you know, is college right for you? Is that a great financial decision? Like college is really an investment, putting money in, getting money out, financial literacy, other things that are going to be important for your life and navigating your career, but a lot of focus on how that's going to be navigating your life. You know, you think I want to really work in manufacturing and you also have this idea that you want to live in a big city. Maybe do a little bit of research. Not a lot of big manufacturing places are in big cities. So how does your life align with your career in all those different aspects?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Awesome. All right. So that's all the questions I have for you, but I want to open it up to our audience with questions. Yeah.
What kind of, for Steve, do you guys like drill into the ground or like what, how do you guys like, is there like a map that you guys already have, like that shows where you guys are and tells you how, what kind of ground you're working on or whatever?
Yeah, so both. Yeah, there's existing geologic maps of basically everywhere, the whole United States, state of California, every region, down to pretty good detail that tell us what to expect here that's underground. Sort of generically kind of what to expect. So underneath this building here where we are, and look at the map, and it tells me, well, I'm gonna find soils that are, I'm not gonna find rock, but I'm gonna find soils that are clay and gravel and sand. And okay, so that gives me a general idea, but now I have to know right here where we put this building, what's clay, what's sand, and what's gravel. So yeah, where are they? And so then we have to come and we'll either dig a hole with an excavator to look down, or we'll drill a hole into the ground, depth wise. If it was for schools have special requirements, so we'd be going to 50 feet down at least. If it was a house, maybe 15 feet at the most. We want to understand though, and basically when we're looking at the soil, if you build a building on it, you don't want your building to move. So we need to have a picture of underground to know that the house won't move. And so, yeah, we use both maps to give us a general sense of what we'll find, and then actual drilling or digging to really identify what specifically is here.
Great question. Yeah, we have another question.
I'm interested in what you guys do on computers. I've heard a couple things come up, but what specific programs are open on your computers in the course of the month that you're working in? And then maybe also like what are broad computing skills, maybe not a specific program that you use, but you do 3D modeling, you need to know how to read any scripts or pieces of code. Are you mostly doing, is it text-based, is it visual-based? So what kind of computer skills broadly thinking, and then specific applications that you use in your fields?
Sure, I'll go ahead. Yeah, 3D modeling is absolutely the future. I mean, we do everything in Revit at this point. And it's just constantly open. I mean, we're working in and out of plans. Clients more and more want to see not only what the shape of the house is going to be, but what are the colors of the kitchen going to be, the tile that's going in, the cabinets. They want to be able to see the colors. And things are even starting to move in a full 3D space where you're putting on goggles and get to actually see the space that you walk into the building that you have. At that point, you want to be able to actually see do a 360 and see the space that you're working in. So that's an extremely important skill to learn. And then we're working in and out of Excel constantly, as well as we use a called Sage Master Builder, which is what helps us track pretty much all of our proposals, takeoffs, our construction based sheet work that way.
So my field, so we're the one, I guess, engineering field that doesn't quite fit the mold in what we do on computers. So most engineering is design work, and so you're talking about designing models in like a program like AutoCAD, which draws plans. Those plans are kind of then what he plugs in to make his 3D models. And so in my field, in the geotechnical, and when we're talking about dirt, we don't build those models. I do use modeling software, but it's very simple 2D modeling. My world is around writing. In geotechnical engineering, we're about words more than designing plans. And so the only profession that actually writes more than geotechnical engineers are lawyers. We're the #2 writing profession in the world. If I'd known that when I started studying geology, I may not have been a geologist, but I hated writing. But turns out we got to write a lot. So that's basic word processing. In the design work, we use Excel a lot. I mean, a lot of engineering is done on Excel, unbelievably. Simple, we use industry specific softwares. They're pretty basic to understand and use. The modeling softwares we use. But the one thing though on computers that I found that has been helpful to me in my career was some years ago I taught myself how to code and write code for websites, and then doing databases and things like that. That knowledge and how databases work and writing code, that I've found has been hugely helpful in understanding all kinds of different things about how software works. And so like even in the business, and maybe not the huge companies, but as smaller companies, we use QuickBooks to do our business. Every small business does. So how does QuickBooks, and you're all confused, the bookkeeper's confused, and how to do this? Well, So a lot of times I can look, just by understanding how databases work, I can figure out what's going on in QuickBooks to relate it. So I found that in that, if you guys are whatever in the electronics and robotics, if you guys are programming at all, that information will be helpful in other things. You'll be actually surprised where you'll run into it in different things you do.
Any GIS in your field?
So yeah, so GIS, yeah, that's big. In geology, it's really big. It's for what we specifically do. We don't have a need to purchase big licensing to really do it. Our GIS is what you can do on Google Earth Pro. But the maps in Google Earth, there's a lot of plugins, that you can put in the files for Google Earth. So you asked about the geologic maps. Well, we have plugins where you can overlay those on Google Earth. LiDAR maps that show us what the ground looks like without vegetation or buildings on it. It's interesting to see, and we can see, especially in our area, there's a lot of landslides. We can see that on those LiDAR images. So we're always doing that. I mean, we're not developing the images, we're just opening the file on Google Earth Pro, but that's real common.
Ours is, we probably use a lot of different softwares. We're doing different work. Yeah, Medtronic is huge, so it's gonna matter who you ask, what group you ask, but I can speak to my group and the scope of work I've seen done around me. So we'll use CAD software, SolidWorks. We use SolidWorks all the time for different 3D modeling, and then they might do like some different FEA softwares after and do some kind of like flow modeling in there or whatever applications they're looking at. Like for example, this is not my group, but I know another group, they do a lot of stents. There's like a ton of FEA involved in that. So hasn't been super involved in my day-to-day, but I definitely know it's happening. Outside of that, we do a lot of statistical analysis. So Minitab is a software we commonly use. I have every Microsoft software, no shout out to the company like specifically, but yeah, I have every Microsoft software open every day. Microsoft Projects, Microsoft PowerPoint, Word, Excel, everything is constantly open on my computer. Teams, I'm in Outlook every day. So yeah, we're using their software a lot. We'll do other like kind of specific to med tech. Like I can think of a software called Mimics. It's like a 3D software where you can take a lot of CT scans from patients and then it'll take all the CT scans and form it into a 3D image, or you have to work with the software and build it together along with another software. And they essentially all work together. So those might be some like specific industry specific. I don't know if you guys probably aren't working with CT scans or anything like that. But there's other depths of that. I know the people on my team, I don't do coding, so they would have softwares with actual code up and things like that. We don't have a ton of projects in my group that do that, but we do have like surgical robotics teams. I know they have a lot more of that software open than anybody in my group, but yeah, I hope that's kind of like a broad general idea of what we're working on and what we're working with. I like that question. Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. Any other questions from our audience? Yes. Yeah.
Mitch, do you have to go to college to get your general contracting license?
No, you have to have 4 years of experience signed off by a contractor with a license in order to do that. And there's a ton of different ways to go about doing that. You can just straight up apply and go and start getting that experience. There are apprenticeships that are available. You can go through like for becoming an electrician, so like to get that license, there are actual schools that will pay you to work while you get that experience, and then they will sign off on your experience. So you're not only coming out of that school with money in your pocket, but also a license on the way out. There's tons of opportunities to go about getting your license, which is what is nice about our path, right? It's like the other panelists said, it's like, if college is the way you want to go, that's great, but you have to be prepared to make that investment. If that's something you want to do, where from my field, you can get in, you don't have to make an investment, you get invested in. So
Do you start to finish homes, like everything, plumbing, installation?
Yeah.
Electrical, all that?
Yep. We have people come in and they look at our soils that we want to build on, and then from there, we're in charge of, getting the right equipment out. We pour the foundation, we put in the mud sills, we go walls up, we do roof, and then from there we close in siding, windows. We put all the electrical in, all the receptacles, all of the light switches. And now more and more things are becoming really technical, where even light switches are more computerized. And we're putting in full home Wi-Fi systems, as well as then the kitchens, bathrooms, showers. Yeah, so we do every single thing that you look around in this building is just what we do. Yeah.
And you guys have like different groups, like, or is it just, it's all your guys' company and it's. Like, say there's specialists for your company that.
We absolutely have different groups, right? So we have specialists that specialize in like site work type stuff where we're moving dirt, we're putting foundation. We have specialists that come in and do the framing. We have specialists that come in and do the siding and windows. We have specialists that do the finish work. All the electrical is done by a licensed electrician, which generally, we are in between having our own guys do that. We have a lot of subcontractors that will do things like the electrical, the HVAC. Oftentimes our foundation work is subbed out as well. But pretty much everything else we do in-house ourselves. And so we have two different kinds of crews. Like I said, we have site work and framing guys, and then we have finish guys that come in and they do basically everything after sheetrock is in. We'll do all of the cabinets, the trim, the doors, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And then you have people coming to do garage doors, right?
Sometimes, yeah, that is definitely, that would be a subject.
Garage doors.
Yes, of course. I'm sorry, I didn't cover that. Yes. Like I said, a garage door is considered a subcontractor for the most part, yes.
Yes, I'm just like, anyway, thank you. Great questions. Any last, but yes.
Hello, this one is for Steve. I'm Michelle, I'm a senior here, and I'm very interested in construction and civil engineering. And I heard you had a little bit of knowledge about that. Do you know what classes are most important in university or later on after high school?
Yeah, so, our college paths, around, because you have to take the general ed kind of anyway. And so there's nothing wrong with playing with that a little bit and kind of exploring. So if you're going to go into that, I think even the construction management degrees, they kind of follow more of a civil engineering path. I don't know if you know more about it, but I think they kind of do. And some of them, there's actually construction management, civil engineering thing. Where you get a license. But so those are going to be your math classes and things. And so they need physics, chemistry, you need math. And those classes, those are the nuts and bolts of what you have to have for those degrees. And there's just no other way. You have to take them to go on. But the other classes, I mean, so like, what my field is, the geology exposes you to just different pieces. Now that intro geology class, they're not going to be talking about construction. They're going to be talking about soil and rock and sandstone and limestone and, mountains and things. And so it's a little different. You got maybe the professor connects a little bit for you. But I think what you probably in the early parts, if you can go and find a way to intern or even shadow or something in engineering for civil engineering firms, it's going to give you a lot of guidance on kind of whatever you're taking will help you in the next phase and what you're going through. And so the civils, they'll be doing a lot of the other things they'll steer. We didn't mention it all, but the surveying. So it's surveying and civil engineering are tied together. And so what Mitch had mentioned before, trigonometry, it's huge. We use it in everything. Everybody uses it. It's a construction world in engineering. Just use it. So those types of things are important.
I don't know about every college, but you can go to like big engineering colleges and a lot of times they'll have on their website like the breakdown of course load by major. And you don't have to skip to somebody who's already in the industry. You could contact like one of the college clubs. Like I'm sure some of the students there, at least at my college, like I was in many clubs where we would interact with high school students. Like you can just go to the next level and try to interact with a college student doing civil engineering and like, what's your life like? What are you studying? Yeah, and then you can also interact with industry. So you can kind of do both of them too if you're interested.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Most civil engineering schools have good active clubs, the engineering clubs that the students can definitely answer questions.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, no, that's great advice. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, we have another question. I'm going to repeat the question. Yeah, can you make it louder? The biggest daily.
Biggest daily challenge. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Man,
Biggest business ownership for you guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say-
Outside of
I was gonna say like interpersonal managing of people would be the biggest daily challenge by far. Hands down.
Difficult client, that's where your people check skills come in. And I know both of us, you run into it, it's part of life, and you want to be in the management side of doing whatever you're doing. You're the one that's going to have to deal with that. And so, yeah, that I'd agree. That's the most challenging, the most difficult thing that we handle with when somebody's really stressed out, coming to you and maybe yelling at you or something. That's hard, and you have to figure out how to move it. And it's don't take things personal. Just keep going. That, and then I don't know. That makes even the technical challenges we run into almost easy there. But the more challenging things that I get into engineering wise are the fun stuff. How difficult can we make a site? Let's pick the most worst mountain in the world and let's put a house on it. Tell me how I'm going to do that. And so, those are fun.
Yeah, I won't add too much, just working with people in different functions. I'm in R&D. We work with people in operations. We work with people in marketing, people in clinical, preclinical. They kind of all have a different perspective. And so kind of getting teams to align on decisions or come together and agree on different points. So kind of having influence in a group and bringing together, like R&D should come with some data, or preclinical should come with some perspective on their experience, et cetera, et cetera. And how do you balance that out and make a decision as a team?
Great, thanks. Okay. Wonderful, thank you so much. And so we do have a couple of questions from our audience.
It actually ties into working with team like you guys were just talking about. Someone asked, do you often in your day-to-day work as a team, work individually? And if you are working as part of a team, how large are the teams that you're a part of?
I guess I work in a team too, because my dad owns the company and I work with him to basically then manage several other teams, right? So I have, I think 4 teams of 4 right now that we basically work through, not including the office. So yeah,
So yeah, they in what I do for teams wise. So we kind of do our work individually, and then once it's put together, then we bring in the team and do it. So my company's small, there's 4 of us professionals. And so the teams would be either of 2 or of 4 typically. And so we'll do our individual work, we'll put it together, and then we have to pass it to our team member to say, hey, can you look at this? Am I doing good, or am I insane? What I thought of. And so we have to work together, and sometimes maybe I don't know how to handle this situation. What's your experience here? And you need the experience of somebody else, because we all have a little bit different experience. And look at it and say, hey, yeah, I saw this situation on this job, and they point you in the right direction. And so that's in our office when we're doing that. So yes, small teams, but always in a team. We don't pass anything on out of our company without it going through a team environment first before it goes out. Then on the second side is once construction's happening and you're building and so on big projects where the teams may be 5, 10 or more people with a multiple disciplines. So there'll be the general contractor, there'll be me from the dirt engineering, there'll be the structural engineer that did the walls and the concrete. There'll be the guy that's going to build that stuff that puts it together, the concrete guys or the framing guys or something. There'll be different pieces and so kind of, I think that you mentioned sort of thinking on the fly and working through issues, and maybe don't always get an engineer to do it. If the bigger the project is, the bigger the building is, the more cases that in that construction that there's going to be a challenge that's not on the plans. Somebody's got to think real time on how to fix it. So usually it comes back to the contractor saying, hey, this is my idea to how we can fix it. And then it goes to the engineer, hey, can we do this? And so solving those problems, and you need a team to solve those problems.
I'll try to give a short-winded answer, but essentially, I work on a project and then that project is staffed for different functions. So I'm part of the R&D team, and depending on where that project is, the R&D team might be big or small. Right now, our R&D team is 2 people. My last one was 5. I think the largest R&D team in all of Medtronic is over 100. So just a lot of variety there, but you're not working with all of those people all the time. So maybe for this phase of the project, we need to deliver X, Y, Z. So I'm gonna be accountable for X. Steve's gonna be accountable for Y, you're accountable for Z. And we might work together with other functions all individually, but we all are still part of a project, but we might not be working together. It all kind of matters. So big picture, my project team right now has, I think, just over 10 people. We have some folks in Japan, we have some folks in Southern California, some folks in Minnesota. So like when we work with who also depends, but big picture, we brought the whole team together, probably just over around 10 people. And I do a lot of independent work. So it's also about when are you going to bring which people in to support different items. So we might have like a bi-weekly big team meeting with Japan and the US team. We might have like a weekly team meeting with the US team. I'm doing one-on-ones with like my tech lead. I'm doing one-on-ones with some people in other functions every now and again, but I'm like independently accountable for coming up with a strategy, coming up with what I'm going to bring for that team to work on. So it's a lot of independent work, bringing the team together. Some of the independent work is figuring out what you're bringing the team together to work on and how you want them to support your project.
Thanks. And then one last question we have from the webinar is, how do you maintain a work-life balance? Jump in.
I mean, from owning your own company, I actually don't think you do, is the answer to that question. You have to find people in your life who understand your obsession with what you do and are willing to support you in that endeavor. That's really the answer to that. Because especially when you're running your own company, when you're not working, the company isn't being set up to make more money. Is kind of how it works. So at some point you have to separate yourself and you have to figure out how to turn it off, but you don't, is the answer to that question.
Yeah, that's challenging to turn it off. Yeah. You know, I do a few things to try to balance it out. I actually do try to, clock hits 5 o'clock, work is turned off. You call PM nighttime, you know, 5 o'clock or the weekends or whatever, unless I say, okay, I'm gonna work on this, which I try not to, try to turn it off. Get a call, email or whatever, it's tomorrow, sorry. You can't always do that, but I try to do that. It kind of keeps me straight. Other things you do have, you know, you need a life outside of your work. It shouldn't be all work, whether you play softball on the weekends or do something else. And so for me personally, you know, I do different things. I'm involved in different groups outside of work. If you guys have ever done anything in Pioneer High School or something with the Rotary clubs, you know, and so I'm in Rotary. Well, yeah, we do things for the community, but it's a social club. You get together and meet other people and hang out with them. Do things like that. So, you know, you need to make an effort to do different things in life that are outside of your job. You know, the job isn't everything, but, you know, I think it's mentioned that, you know, those connections, the networks of people that you need to make connections and for whatever you're doing, that's where you make those also, is outside, being out there in the world, beyond your job.
Say manage expectations up front. My old job, I worked so much so often. I said, that's not for me. So I left, I found a new role. And it was really important to me when I was interviewing for new jobs that I prioritize work-life balance. Sometimes it can be glamorized, like working so much. At my old job, at least it was really glamorized. When I worked all weekend, it was almost like a badge of honor I would see people wear. And for me, I didn't have that perspective. So I wanted to find a place that more aligned with what I wanted my work-life balance to be. I interviewed at companies who just straight up were like, you're going to work 60, 80 hours a week. It's like kind of part of our team culture. And so I didn't want to go to those roles. They were really interesting, but it was just one of the things that I prioritized on my list before I got into the role. My team has a really great balance. I think it matters like what role you end up, if you end up leading a project or you get into a higher up role, that might balance out a little bit. But our team encourages us to take PTO, encourages us to engage in time off, because that ultimately will make you more productive, more happy in your role, stay at that company, continue what you're doing. You don't want to be burnt out. So.
Absolutely, and great way to end the panel. Thank you all so much for being here today to talk to our students, and thank you, audience, for the thoughtful questions. That was really great. Can we give them a round of applause?